You wake in the dark to a scrape that is not wind. You wake in the dark to a scrape that is not wind. Your chest tightens. Something moves outside the cave mouth. Nights like that force choices daylight never tests. Do you light a fire now, or risk noise that draws attention? Start with a number from a classic assemblage. At Zhoukoudian, roughly 67% of hominin bones show large carnivore modification. Bite marks, punctures, and crushing. Put that beside other sites. Sima de los Huesos shows less than 4%. 2 out of 3 versus under 1 in 20. That contrast matters for how people organize the night. F01, F02. This film turns numbers like that into a map. A map of hotspots and quiet patches through time and place. Then it tests 4 simple behaviors that bones and settlements should show if predation mattered. Those behaviors are things archaeology can check. The central question is short. Were hominins usually prey, or only sometimes? The honest answer is neither blanket yes nor simple no. The evidence looks like terrain, some places hot with predator activity, others quietly lived in. Which terrain a group lived on would change daily life. Method matters. Taphonomy is the study of how bones record events, how marks form and what they mean. Experts read cut marks, percussion scars, tooth pits, crushing, trampling scratches, and root etching. One mark can mean many causes. That problem is called equifinality. So a tooth-like gouge is not always a tooth. Are tooth marks always evidence that predators ate people? From about 2018, machine vision and machine learning began to help taphonomists. Algorithms can separate subtle groove shapes and reduce human subjectivity. That does not erase equifinality, but it makes site numbers comparable on a common scale. If machine vision gives comparable numbers, how did communities divide the night under real predation risk? This question opens the next thread. F07, F05. When teams reanalyze classic collections, a patchwork appears. At Sima de los Huesos, fewer than 4% of specimens show tooth marks. At Olduvai's DS sample, a computer vision check found about 1.9%. By contrast, Thomas Quarry preserves a middle Pleistocene femur with multiple tooth marks read as hyena consumption. Those site differences are real numbers. Why do they occur? Think about nightly organization. Where site signals show heavy carnivore modification, ethnographic logic and predator biology predict denning in defensible places, concentrated hearths, and organized rotating watches. Where marks are rare, camps could be smaller, more mobile, and night duties less formal. That answers how communities might divide the night. But did fire actually reduce predation enough to change caregiving and sleeping choices? That is the next question to test. Not every cave is a den. South African Karst sites give a different signal. Reviews show butchered or cut-marked bones are usually a very small fraction, often below 1%, sometimes a little above. That low butchery signal points to different costs of transport and different mobility patterns and makes long, defended cave occupation less likely in some landscapes. F04. Predator identity changes everything. Hyenas crush and accumulate bones in dens, producing broken and chewed long bones. Raptors like crowned eagles take juveniles and leave scattered small remains. A landscape dominated by hyenas creates a different human response than a landscape where raptors are the main danger. Which predator dominated near a camp decides the most effective defense? What about fire? Light and heat deter many predators and make guarding feasible. Fire concentrates people and creates defended loci where watches can rotate. But routine nightly fire depends on climate, fuel, and social organization. Archaeological signals for habitual nightly hearths vary, so fire helped in some places but was not a universal fix. Did fire actually reduce predation enough to change caregiving? The bones and hearth suggest it did sometimes, but the effect is conditional and local. F09, F10. Machine vision turns fragmentary bone collections into comparable numbers across sites. That lets researchers plot hotspots where predator alteration is common and quiet patches where marks are rare. The result is not a single heroic story, but a terrain map. Social life had to navigate that terrain. Where the map is hot, predictable behaviors emerge again and again in the record. F07, F01, F02. Here is the macro answer. Hominins were sometimes prey and sometimes not. At places like Zhoukoudian, Where roughly 2/3 of hominin bones are altered, daily life shifted toward denning, rotating night watches, tighter infant care close to hearths, and targeted fire use. Those are plausible adaptive responses to persistent risk. At sites where toothmark frequencies sit at 1 to 4%, groups could afford greater mobility and looser night routines. The map decides the strategy. F01, F02, F05, F03, F07. That leads to testable predictions. If raptors concentrated on juveniles, expect frequent alloparenting, caregiving by someone other than the parent, infants kept very close to adults, and small scattered bone deposits. If hyenas dominate, expect repeated den occupations, concentrated hearth features, and signs of rotating watches and trampled approaches and midden build-up. Put simply, bones, camp layout, and hearth should line up. Archaeology can test these links site by site. F09, F01. Important limits remain. Equifinality can still mimic tooth or tool marks. Old collections need reanalysis with standardized AI classifiers, and labs must share protocols so numbers are comparable. Scaling a cave signal into landscape risk requires seasonal, ecological, and predator density data. Teams are working on this now, so some comparisons must remain tentative until more reanalyses are complete. F06, F07, F08. Predation mattered, but unevenly. Where bones were heavily chewed, groups adapted with denning, rotating watches, controlled fires, and tighter infant care. Elsewhere, people stayed more mobile and slept with. If the night shaped human behavior, what else did local danger shape? Watch the next film testing specific sites, started with a deep reanalysis of Olduvai and a field study of night duties.